Avery, I guess he's online. Hi, Avery. Alex began his Upper Delaware tenure in May of 2022, and he's the manager of the Cultural Resource Management Program and curator of the Zane Grey Museum. He's interdisciplinary historian and tribal relations coordinator. Alex was born in Puerto Rico, and Lori said if I read all his educational background, we'd be here all night. But he's went through all his college career working on software. Is that true? So he's got a long list of degrees behind them. Avery Olger began interning with the Park Service 2 years ago to the Wayne Pike Workforce Alliance program. He graduated from Honesdale High School this year. And he's the son of Lisa Olger and Jason Olger. And his primary responsibilities have been transcribing and converting those oral histories to a web accessible format, along with doing research and assisting. He just entered his freshman year at Tufts University with plans to double major in history and political science, and aspires to work in archival preservation or to become a professor of American history or politics. So this is a real treat for us to hear what's been going on with all those oral histories. I know they've been in the making for many years.
Yeah, I mean, as some of you all know, the Oral History Project here at the Upper Delaware started about 40 years ago with Mary Curtis.
A long time.
You know, our legendary park historian, and carried on by my predecessor, Lauren Houtman. And then the pandemic hit, things slowed down, and then I started my tenure in May and carried the torch. I'm not gonna say much. I'm gonna let Avery discuss the work that he did and give you guys a presentation on our oral history project, best practices and other elements of what we do. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Can you spotlight Avery so we can see him a little bit?
He's gonna share a screen.
Oh, good, okay.
Yeah, and thank you guys. And can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I am kind of having trouble hearing you guys. I don't know why. It's probably on my end, but it's working. So, all right. And there we go. All right, so like Alex said, my name is Avery Olger. I'm the intern for the cultural resources, and I've been working for over 2 years on these oral history projects along with Alex, and I just came on this year as an intern, like in person. I've been doing all this work virtually, but I'd like to just start out real quick asking, like, have you guys ever, like, when you were a kid, used like coloring sheets and stuff like that? Like, by a show of hands? Can't really see you guys. All right, so some of you guys know what I'm talking about. When you were doing those colorings, did you do it only with one crayon, or did you do it with many, many colors?
Any colors.
Right, so that's exactly the point of oral history. So to start off introducing what are oral histories. Oral histories are interviews of firsthand experience with the history of the area or the culture. They're recorded in audio or video format, and they're mainly used to preserve and interpret the perspectives and experiences of people who lived here in the past or who are still living here, who had participated in historically significant events. They're also used to interpret areas with natural and cultural importance. Some of those areas can be pre-contact or historical. Does not matter. Oral history still can cover those. But back to my original point with the crayons, oral histories are meant to give all sides of the story. They're the best way for us to indiscriminately give an accurate history, because a lot of history textbooks, a lot of historical sources prior to the modern age and this new interpretation movement, they were given using very few sources, mostly sources that are white Americans, sources of those nature. And oral histories are meant to highlight everyone. So African Americans and Black Americans during the Civil Rights Movement, Native Americans and their struggles and their livelihoods in America, and many other groups. So that's kind of why we, as the Upper Delaware Scenic and Recreational River, use these oral histories, because we want to be able to interpret all sides of the story and not just one specific viewpoint. So a little bit about the oral history process. The Oral History Association separates. Sorry, let me just move this. Here we go. The Oral History Association. Oh, can
Sorry,
you
can
guys hear
you
me?
speak up a little bit? You seem to be getting a little quieter.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So the Oral History Association separates the process of taking and preserving oral histories into 4 steps. That's preparation, interviewing, preservation, access, and use. I bolded preservation, access, and use because that's primarily what I have been focusing on during my time at the Upper Delaware, but I will touch briefly on preparation and interview. So the oral history preparation phase begins with a pre-interview, which that determines the relevance of the interviewee to the overall topic and outlines to the interviewer the oral history process. So like exactly what questions are going to be asked, and it also aims to receive the interviewee's informed consent prior to the interview. So it's a lot of paperwork, a lot of just making sure that everything is like up to date, the way it's supposed to be. The next stage is, of course, then conducting the interview, where the interviewer is asking open-ended questions so that the narrator can explain their experiences as well as their thoughts and their feelings about the subject that they're being interviewed on. So it's really important to note that the job of the interviewer is to record the history as it is. Our job is not to uncover the truth about a past event. As much as I would like to be Indiana Jones, that's not my job. So asking biased or weighted questions may end up skewing the overall significance of the event, of what the topic of the oral history, and that may end up affecting future interpretations of the detailed events. So, and affecting those future interpretations, that's a problem. To be quite honest, that's the opposite of what we're trying to do. It's antithetical. So, like I said, my internship primarily dealt with the preservation and the access and use phases. So preservation deals with the care and the storage of the oral histories in our collection. Access and use is when we take the oral histories and we optimize them for public research. So I've broken these phases down over the next couple of slides, just so then you guys can understand what I have been doing and what the Upper Delaware has been doing when they are creating researcher-friendly versions of oral histories.
Hey Avery, it's Lindsay. Can you make sure you're not covering your microphone with something where you're just coming in muffled?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know where your mic is? You just
Well,
make sure.
I do have an earbud in. I don't know why that's doing that though.
Oh, maybe put both earbuds in?
You can
That-
go to the sound part of Zoom and increase your output.
Can you?
You can, yeah, but it might take a minute for him to figure that
Oh.
out. You can. If you go on the little microphone and there's an advanced section,
Well, here,
you
how
can
about
increase your output.
I try this?
So while everybody's figuring
Right.
that out,
Does that work?
Oh,
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
what-
better?
Yeah,
All right.
Great.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm puzzled to why that really wasn't working that way.
it's better though, so
Okay.
full steam ahead.
I'm
Uh,
down.
Does anyone need me to repeat anything or?
Well,
Yeah.
no, but now we're seeing your slides in presentation mode, sorry.
Yeah,
Man,
that's
what-
not what I wanted.
No, I know.
Yeah, this thing's. But
That's okay. Technical difficulties.
yeah. And of course, I had this all worked out.
Of
Like
course. That's the way it always is.
prior to
Right,
this, I was like, this is how I'm gonna do it. I have everything set up and then
right. I'm sure you tested it with a friend this afternoon and everything.
let's see.
there we
There
go.
we go.
All right.
Now, is that showing you my presenter view or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
It's good. We're just seeing the slides.
Okay, so do you guys need me to repeat anything? Would you want me to go?
No.
All
We're
right.
good.
right. So, my next slide was just about how we care and how we store oral histories at museum storage at the Upper Delaware. All of our oral histories that we have in our collection were recorded on cassette tapes. There's kind of similar to the ones that, like, if you guys were the people who lived through the 90s, they may have held your mixtape. Unlike the mixtape that you guys had that was likely thrown on the floor of your car, we keep all of our 160 oral histories in our museum storage facility to ensure the preservation of these audio on the tapes. They're in a fire controlled environment, so then nothing can happen to them. To prevent the deterioration of the original audio, we typically avoid using the tapes, and instead we record these tapes onto an accessible WAV file. So then when we play the audio, we can play it as many times as we want without damaging the magnetic tape. And I'll discuss WAV files briefly in a future slide. That's not really important, but I'll discuss them. So when I go and digitalize an oral history, we of course start with the original cassette tape, and I take it and I put it into a software called Audacity. So Audacity is free to use. It's a professional grade audio manipulation software, and it allows me to adjust volume, gain, and background noise, and it's meant to produce a better sounding recording. And it's helped me a lot. I've learned a lot from it. Sorry, train just passed my room. But regardless, better sounding recording, and it's easier for me to listen to the tape. Then I of course I export it as a WAV file, which, if you're not familiar with WAV files, it's a file that mimics the raw audio from a cassette tape completely. The MP3 file format, which many of you are likely familiar with, because that's like standard for your iPhone, standard for that stuff. That compresses audio to a smaller format with the purpose of fitting a lot of files onto one device. But the drawback of MP3 files is that that ends up making them unsuitable for digital audio preservation, is that these files are really actually low quality. So WAV files are the highest quality audio that you would use. You would not be able to use these files on an MP3 player, however, because about 1 hour of audio typically takes up about 1.3 gigabytes of storage. So we have to store these tapes on our digital collection server for that reason. Yeah, so after that, I then, this is a step in my process that's atypical for traditional oral history processes. This is kind of a system that I decided to incorporate. I enter the WAV files into Whisper AI, which is an open source AI audio transcription software. It's created by OpenAI, who also created ChatGPT. The software was created to make hyper accurate transcriptions for videos on YouTube. But I figured out that if you take this software and you plug them in, it'll do exactly the same thing, but for an oral history. So I usually use this software to make a first draft transcription, and it greatly has like decreased the amount of time that it takes for me to complete a transcription. So like prior to using this method, it took me a 2-hour audio tape. Took me around 20 hours to completely transcribe and index by hand. With Whisper AI, I was able to cut down the time to just about 5 hours. So after I enter it in a Whisper, get my rough draft, I then move on to my editing phases. So I listen to the tape, I make changes to any discrepancies or errors in the AI transcription. I label speakers, I add timestamps, and at the end, you end up getting a nice labeled, very organized transcription. I then move on to indexing phases, which is where I then create an index of the tape based on topics with linkable timestamps. So you could click the timestamp and it would go to whatever section of the tape you'd want. And it's primarily just for the ease of access to research and for the public in the future. And that ends up being the final product. So you have an indexed, you have a transcribed oral history. In the future, once a lot of these oral histories are completed, our plan is to publish these oral histories, select oral histories on the Upper Delaware webpage for public access. So then, and for researchers, so these oral histories can give anyone who would like to access them a multifaceted like an archive of all of the oral histories in our collection. A few new technologies. Oh, check out. I just got another error. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I just got a pop-up on my computer that was like an error about Zoom. That's weird. So anyway, as technology has been advancing while I've been doing this project, which is mind-boggling to me because it's only been 2 years. AI has been really becoming so much better in creating accurate transcriptions in a faster amount of time. Microsoft has introduced a new transcribe function in Word, which creates a stamp transcript and is able to distinguish between multiple speakers. This really, in my opinion, is an incredible feat by Microsoft. And I've begun experimenting with the program in our transcription, and so far it's actually worked pretty well. It's really important to note that AI hasn't replaced me yet. And the editing process is still very much something I have to do. Usually the benefits to an AI complementary system is the speed that I do my work with. So around 10 minutes of audio typically takes someone about an hour who is like a seasoned professional at transcription. For an hour of history, this would take about 6 hours to complete. Using Word's transcribe tool, this process has trimmed the time down for me, who, even though I've been doing this for 2 years, I can't call myself a seasoned or someone who transcribes oral histories that frequently. It's trimmed the time down for me to around 4 hours. Hello. Okay, here we go. So the outcomes of our project here, we have completed completely completed 2 oral histories, Millie and Richard Turner, and the oral history of Floyd Campfield. Millie and Richard Turner in their history talked a lot about their experiences with like new technologies and in the area. So going from like horse and buggy and going to school, walking uphill both ways to school. Yeah. To then the dawn of the automobile and electricity in Wayne County. Floyd Campfield had his oral history was primarily about his collection of artifacts that he found around along the river, as well as his eelwares and his eelware business, and there was an extensive oral history on that. Currently in progress, we do have a number of volunteers that are working on oral histories currently. They're working on volunteers of the former National Park Service employees. Listing these out would take probably a little longer than they're supposed to, so than I have allotted. So you can see here that these are the histories we're currently working on. We have a team of 6 volunteers. Alex can probably clarify. I'm pretty sure it's 6. And in 2025, we're going to be moving on, hopefully, from this project to a local history project. So my last slide here is how you can help. So we have a number of oral histories, the ones that I have listed here that do not have they don't have releases. In order for us to be able to share this information with the public, these oral histories need releases. So if any of you are able to identify some of the members that are on this list, you can absolutely reach out to Alex. I'm gonna throw Alex on here because currently my government email doesn't work because I'm not working with Park Service. So Alex is going to be receiving those emails. And also, if you have experience with local historical events and are interested in providing us with an oral history, we would also, we would love to have you contact us, and please contact Alex with any oral history topics that you may be interested in giving. So with that, I thank you all. And does anyone have any questions?
You have Mary Martin listed, she's a school teacher in Harrisburg.
Did you hear that, Avery?
No, I didn't. Sorry, could you repeat that?
I saw a listing for Mary Martin, there was a Mary Martin that taught school in Harrisburg for a lot of years, like.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're saying Mary Martin.
Mary Martin, is she the school teacher from Narrowsburg? Do you know? Or Alex?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked at that one yet.
Do we know if she's still around? Are there any?
She was over in Sin when I was a kid.
Are there relatives in there?
I know another one.
I'm not aware of any unless there it is. I'm just gonna tell you that Mary Martin taught in Quebec for many, many years. She taught 4th grade in Harrisburg. I've gone for a long bit.
Coming up with a relative, I guess, that we get.
He was single,
That's the closest that we could come to, you know. Getting it from the end, yes.
Mary Nelson. I know there's a Nelson family that have been here for like 125 years in Berryville.
Okay.
Matt and Aaron Nelson, I know them. So they might be related to her.
I don't think so.
Cause their homestead
No, I
is
don't think
his dad.
Is Bob Nelson.
Bob Nelson is the grandfather.
Yeah, well, the great grandfather Bob, he passed, but I think there were 2 different families.
Two Nelson families.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're related to the Kerrs, and the Kerrs settled in this area in the 1800s. They ran a boarding house where Matt Nelson lives, that big house in
Yeah.
Berryville. That was a boarding house that actually housed canal men. And
Right.
it's right on the canal. That's where one of the locks were.
Right.
So,
Well, it might be worth
Yeah.
contacting at least the other Nelsons to see if they might know some of the other
Mary
Nelsons.
Nelson was a teacher.
Yes.
You go.
Town of Delaware, you had Neil and Vera Tobin. When this first came to light at the council that they were going to transcribe these things, I recognized those as parents of a classmate of mine.
Okay.
And I had told the Park Service that I would have that their son. He was kind of a busy guy, he was the southeast director of the EPA. So he was down south. But I spoke to their son and they said he contacted and spoke with them. But apparently it never developed after that. I'll try to get hold of him because
To get released.
Yeah.
to get a release. It was supposed to have been done a long time ago and he was very happy about it. So I'll try to get hold of him again and find out.
Okay.
The name on the bottom, Henry Rupp, was Don Rupp's father,
Mhm.
and Chris Rupp is a living grandchild. He's a senior grandchild, and I'm sure he'd be willing to provide a release. And there's one more. I donated a beautiful oral history from Art Barnes. Barnes is settled in Barryville.
Yeah, I've seen that one, yep.
And I sat down with Art and he decided the trip from Harrisburg to the Scarbush Bridge out of his head.
Yeah.
And I took the float trip with him many times, but in that audio, I'm sitting on this porch and the birds are chirping and it's quite exciting, but I don't see it in that lineup, but I donated it to the Park Service at least 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's unique. He was a railroad man for quite a while, and he knew every nook and cranny of the river where the springs were, where the overhangs were, and he recites it on this audio tape. So, cool.
They would like to hear about that, right, Lindsay?
But you
Well, I
have
think
to-
Avery said he knows.
Hello?
Fred, go ahead.
Oh, and do we,
Yeah, Jack and Ginny Joyce have both passed away. Their sons, Ed and John, live in Inquinunk. I talked to Jack before, and he said there was no way he was ever going to release that. His sons, I don't know. But they've since passed, Ginny and Jack. So that's all I can tell you about that.
Thank you.
all right, thanks, Fred.
Go ahead, Lori.
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank Alex for helping out with our publicity in advance of this program, that he went live on Radio Catskill on August 29th to preview this program. And from that and the press release we put out, we got a phone call from Marvin Rappaport, who some of you may remember was the chief of staff to Congressman Matt McHugh back in the 1970s when the Upper Delaware Scenic Recreational River was designated. And he called us to say Matt McHugh would like to give an interview. So I heard you say that you are still accepting new submissions of oral histories, but he is elderly, as most people are, and we were involved in that capacity, but I know that Stephanie passed along that message to Alex and Avery, and also that Charlie Morrison was on your list. He was with the New York State DEC.
Yeah.
Unless it's Charles Morrison, because that's a fairly common name, but he used to be in touch with us very frequently.